I'm recording.
I like shows inspired by my father. They're all it's okay. And if he was all weird. It's just like the whole language.
So, this is what it's transcribed on the computer. You ready for this? It says, that is, I like shows inspired by my father. You know all these, things like that. You can see here. So, that is going now live nationwide, those words. You know what else like shows inspired by? It says my father. I don't know who said it, but that's what the computer heard. It was like Charlotte, inspired by and since my father. Oh, it's still like Charlotte. Who is Charlotte?
Charlotte's Web.
But Charlotte's Web was not inspired by my father.
Are you sure?
Valid point. I mean,
Always something.
I was not around for a significant, well, didn't look at my dad's.
No, maybe he was right. Okay.
And then, of course, the transcription was the bug about the bug. Why a bug? See, it's trying to distract us from Charlotte. We were just getting down to the mystery of Charlotte. We just have to do DBQ now. We have no choice now. The bug is spoken. Okay, so I should read the documents, and they really do narrow the documents down towards the irreconcilable, reservationists, etc. And so, are there any questions on ones? Any questions? Yes. You have to have them memorized, and then in front of the class, you have to one by one recite them in the form of an interpreted dance.
I realized that last day myself.
Yeah, of course, you have the document, and you can jot down things on it, you can underline stuff. But when you get to class tomorrow, you have to write a very brief outline. I want you to do that just for time. Hopefully you have a kind of your outline prepared in your head. Any other questions? Yes, question. For document 2? Document 3? Okay, actually, most of the time you see this document Roman numeral. Also, when I played basketball, that was our George Washington. Senior high school, that was George Washington. Oh my God. Okay. Wait, so what's this? Yeah, so run it. It's weird the things you remember. It's weird. I remember all that stuff. I don't remember what the keys are. I don't remember what class period this is. So back to Roman history. So Article 10, that basically, I know it's a very weird way of saying it, but it basically says that the members of the League of Nations all promise to defend their nations or defend member nations. They all promise to do this. Did it? I know something. I know I made a mistake. It's okay, I know.
Oh, you also spelled the rest of it.
What else I do?
It's K-A-T-H-E-R-I-N-E.
That's what I spelled.
No, you forgot the other E.
Okay. So with that, Article 10. So the member nations declare that they will defend other member nations. That is the big thing about Article 10. And this is called, and write this next to it, I'll let you use this a little bit, a very important piece of outside information. Article 10 is called collective security. It's called collective security. So what it's basically saying is, they're telling any possible aggressor, if you attack, let's say, let me throw a country out here, and this is purely random, Czechoslovakia. And let's say, let me throw another, random, Germany attacks Czechoslovakia. It's random, there's nothing like this could possibly happen. All the other members of the League of Nations said they'll come to their defense. And this was meant to deter other countries or aggressive countries. Who would ever attack the whole world? Because that's what it's implying, therefore, no war. But that was the idea. Now, I think you could also see the argument to it. Does that now imply that if the US is a member, we must send troops to the pension as a occupant? So that's, you could imagine people being upset. There's no declaration of war. Does the Constitution say that? That's Article. So thank you for asking. That's a very good question. Put +1 at the top of your. You can count it into mathematics. Right? We made that clear. Everyone gets such credit now, right? I'll give you all 5. That's right. Sound good? And go and get in his face. Yeah. Gary, Mr. Pete, I'm gonna tell him he said that.
Just tell him to watch this. Yeah.
What's that?
Just tell him to watch this video. The first day of class, he's scared like half an hour away. Like the second day of math, everything's wrong. And then like
That's so envy.
you get like a weekend. It's like the choice.
I think people are already scared enough of it. We're, him and I are both. That's how we see it. We're all planning, we came in together, we're probably gonna go on. Okay, is there another one? Any other documents? Yes. Chicago Tribune was essentially, I think, most newspapers were becoming relatively mainstream, so not particularly one party. But if you can look at this document, if you look at document 4, is that right? Which point of view is this? We have League of Nations marrying the United States to foreign entanglements. Everyone make that out? And what's the Senate doing? Stop it. What point of view is this? Yes.
Well, it's obviously stating that the defendant is trying to prevent this, but another time, I think this might be proposed,
It's, but are they reservationists, irreconcilables, or well done? I don't know, it says constitutional rights. He was trying to stop with constitutional rights. See that in the newspaper with that thing it's holding? Which one is this problem? It's probably irreconcilable, but it could be reservationists saying we must protect our constitutional rights. And so the Chicago Tribune, it's showing this cartoonist. Because one thing mainstream newspapers will do technically show cartoons on most point of view. It's showing a probably irreconcilable point. Yes. Did you get this? Does anybody else not have the documents? What else would be a piece we got?
I didn't.
What that? I think everything was on it. What we got it, okay? Thank you for asking. Any others? Any others? Always look at the author and try to get the date, try to put in context, think about what's going on at that time. But I'll give you a hint. Look down on document 5. Herbert Hoover. He kind of talked about various things in there, but that first line tells exactly what he is. See what it says? Yeah, he's a reservationist. Pass reservations. And one thing, everyone click look at document 6. Document 6 is kind of a touchy one. You have to read through it, kind of read carefully, go through it. Du Bois, using the English pronunciation, the way Americans pronounce his name. Du Bois, he's a liberal. He wants that league. So he's kind of mad at, because of the idiotic way in the way in which the stubbornness of liberal Wilson and the political fortunes of Republicans, most reservations were Republicans. He's mad at them for not passing the thing. He wants the treaty. He doesn't care if there's reservations or not. He thinks that League of Nations is important. Basically, what he's saying is it's the only way to get rights for people who are not white. We have a leading reservationist now on Article 10. Did you catch that? A leading reservationist. The guy who was furious that Wilson didn't invite him to the treaty. That's Henry Cabot Lodge. Let's see, document 10. I'm in document 8. Always looking to road it. And they kind of divide it up. They have irreconcilables. They have a couple of irreconcilables. They have reservationists. They have a couple of, quote from Wilson. They actually have the actual Article 10. They have somebody who wants to pass. There's lots of really good documents, and they kind of narrow down to the different groups in the questions on documents. So you have to use at least 6 documents. 6 documents. On average, it's about 2 per paragraph. So if you're constructing a paragraph, you need a topic sentence, brief explanation of what it is, and then, sure, I need to give an example. Well, you're giving 2 examples, and those are basically the documents to prove that point. And quote the documents. You can use 1 5-word quote, and that's it. Other than that, you use your own words, and you must relate it to your own information, your own outside information, what you could bring in, something you know about, related. And those are your examples in your paragraph. Yes. Yeah. Do you want to do, you can do 1 more paragraph, but then it starts going to do it. Yes, you need it. Yes. You need 3 body paragraphs, but you need an introduction with your thesis. And don't forget, in your introduction, you need context, background material, things that are going on. This is about the ratification. So can't just talk about the war ending. Can't just talk about the actual what's in the treaty, because that's not the question. The question is the strength of the opposition forces rather than aptitude and stubbornness of President Wilson led to the Senate. For the 3 of the documents, you need 1 more additional sentence. Remember, that's kind of why they believe that, why they had that point of view, why they were saying the things they did to their audience. So basically, you're going to say, W.B. Du Bois wanted the League of Nations because he was a liberal. See that little bit of additional why for 3 of them. I know that's 1 more sentence. I know it's a little more writing. That's what we have to do. When I mean we, of course, I mean you. I know that. I understand that. Yes.
Maybe it's fine with those friends that they got well filled into the Odyssey and the 7 minutes versions of the different.
Yes. Yes, you can. Yes, you could say I agree with this, I disagree, or agree with part, and disagree with part. So it was both President Wilson's in aptitude or stubbornness in the aptitude. Yes. But what's the biggest issue? Disagreement. And then all 3 kind of bring back to the plate. You can say the League or Article 10. Because it wasn't so much the treaty itself, it was the League. That's when the theory is. Good question, because I was actually thinking about it to say that, but so thank you. Make sure you have outside information, your facts. Do not, listen everybody, do not start a sentence. You're using the quote. Do not say in document 4. Do not say in document 1. Say in William Boris' speech, or in the Covenant of the League of Nations. Does that make sense? And then at the end of the sentence, what do you put? Doc A, Doc B, Doc 3. It's not a huge deal, but it's one of those little tactical things that, that's not kind of, those are easy to correct mistakes. But when you hated guys, still, when you're grading, it's a stranger. What did I do? I don't need it. So make sure you outline, make sure you have facts, make sure you put down which document is, which is a very quick document. Outline when you get to class. It's for you. I'm not going to go through and check each word. You can use abbreviations, just a few initials. It's just for you to make sure you don't forget. We've all done this where you're writing an essay, and the first thing you think of once your pen hits the paper is finishing. You want to get done, and that's movements. I forgot stuff. I know you have, and it's so annoying. It's such a new number. Doesn't mean, still stuff's gonna happen, but let's just try to alleviate it. Outline really well. Any questions? Yeah, so you can agree, disagree. At your bets. All right, let's get to it. We got Germany. Oh, who was the guy that became overall commander of Allied forces and also makes a great back tactic? Marshal who? APUSH. Anyone get the tattoo? That's got to be a 6-month process. A pain. This, I guess, is one of the most painful areas too, right here. But if you've got to be committed. You've got to be committed to the war effort. How long to keep the blockade going until after the war? Yeah, they did not end until that pin hit the paper. At first off. And what was it called? They had a very specific name for it, where Germany had to take full responsibility for the war. War guilt clause. And we got the spring offensive. Who's the leader of the American forces? The general. You remember? Close, Pershing. There'd be a tank named after in World War II. Good story, huh? Want to know more? I want more tidbits of information that do me no good. And so, it does good. I mean, it's good to know. It really does help to know stuff, but it's amazing stuff. Also, just what force did they fight in? Awful fighting. Argonne, yes. And then good times. Church registration. And I'm trying to think of anything else. Oh, what day of the war end? 11/11/11/1918. All right, let's we got the reparations, we got all this part, didn't we? And Germany's going to blow up into civil war. But Bavaria is going to break up and form for 6 months a Soviet-styled communist country. There'll be a communist revolt in Berlin. It kind of all Europe blew up, and there's going to be fighting all over here. Just chaos. Let's get to a few things in really quick. Well, the reparations, now, originally they said 55 billion. It turned out they did negotiations down to 33 billion. And the whole point is, yeah, you can do the reparations, but can you collect it? And they'll do a couple deals and try to lessen the load, but when Hitler took power, they said no more reparation payments. And West Germany, the country created in the wake of World War II, would eventually pay off the reparations in the 1980s. Eventually pay it off. But it wasn't big enough. It was not big enough to damage Germany's economy completely, but there was this weight hanging over them, and it was a humiliation. And so with that, there's going to be a real call, anger against Germany against the Treaty of Versailles. First off, what is this referring to? Yeah, the blockade. And here is Germany being led to the guillotine by Lloyd George, Clemenceau, and Wilson. And this will be used in Germany, all their problems, Versailles, all their problems for those who opposed our victory in World War I and imposed this horrible treaty. And the desire for revenge will grow bigger and bigger. A whole series of right-wing, ultra-nationalist, rabidly anti-communist, anti-democracy parties, anti-socialist parties, like the Nazis, which are ironically called the National Socialists, and their mortal enemy, the Socialists. Well, I'll tell you a little bit down the road. But here we have, this is the Versailles Treaty and the Hitler Party coming out. That's a British party. And so with that, a couple more things about it. Look at self-determination. I put this back there to give one more time to emphasize. Look at all the different groups there. Yugoslavia. I mean, it's kind of amazing. Italians, Croats, Slovenians, Bosnians, Serbians, Montenegrins, Albanians, Kosovans, Macedonians, Bulgarians, Romanians. Do you get the point here? There are Protestants, there are Catholics, there are Greek Orthodox, and there are mostly Sunni Muslims. I mean, and there's a big population of Germans there too, and Jews. Self-determination based upon ethnic or national identity is really hard. And so when you try to divide things up by that, you're going to lead to what's going to happen here in the 1990s, a horrific civil war. And then we saw the Soviet Union, which they're still going to scoop up Ukraine and other places, extending all the German minority that lives right here. Actually, where my hands are, that's a German majority in that section of Poland. Yes. I don't know if they ever said, but you might see elements like that, sure. But it caused a lot of anger. And the other thing too, what about Germany's colonies, or for that matter, the Ottoman Empire? Well, the United States said, which is ironic, but said we shouldn't have colonies. But France and Britain said, let's make a mandate and we will govern them until they're ready to be independent, meaning they became colonies. So for example, the German colonies right here were divided up in between Britain, France, and Belgium. So for example, this little area of the German colony of Southwest Africa became Rwanda and Burundi, which were governed by Belgium. Why did they give them that? They just kind of carved it up. Actually, Rwanda, because of total war, would be a genocide in the 1990s. But this would become Namibia, eventually Tanzania, Cameroon, a part of it went to Nigeria. But then the Middle East was even more horrific and long-lasting effects. Here we have Britain's going to take 3 provinces of the Ottoman Empire and make a country called Iraq. For one purpose, by the way. What was that purpose? Oil. Much to the chagrin of the people who lived here, France would take Syria and then carve out a Christian enclave called Lebanon. They just kind of out of whole cloth created this area east of the Jordan River and called it Jordan. And then this area west of it, they call it Palestine. There has been basically civil war the whole time since. Right now, there is civil war in what's going to come out of Palestine in 1948. Israel, there's essentially civil war. Jordan is kind of holding on, but the civil war in Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq right now. World War I, its legacy goes on to this day. It's amazing. But then let's get a little bit about foreign policy. We're talking about foreign policy. There's 2 different foreign policy. I mentioned that in the worksheet. I want to make sure I got this. Now, there's going to be liberal and conservative for all kinds of things in terms of misuse all the time, as I told you before. But liberal view of the world is that it's a very complex world, and therefore we need diplomacy. We need to have empathy for our potential enemies and friends. Empathy means understanding. It does not mean sympathy or giving in to them. But we got to know what they're thinking. We need diplomacy. We got to talk to them. For the more conservative, the world is usually very bipolar. And therefore, it's good versus evil. Can you ever deal with evil? No. To give you an example of this, during the Obama administration, they passed a deal for Iran to quit making nuclear weapons. Iran agreed. Some of the money that the U.S. has been holding since 1979, they released to Iran, a few things like that. And because Obama was relatively liberal foreign policy wise. But as soon as President Trump became president, he's very conservative foreign policy wise, and he ripped up that treaty. Also ripped up the treaty with Russia on nuclear weapons, President Trump did. And Iran, who feels threatened by everybody, a very paranoid theocracy, began enriching uranium again. And for whatever reason, the Biden administration, which is a little bit more liberal, but hasn't renewed that treaty, Iran now has uranium appears when he's making nuclear weapons right now. So that's what happened. What's going on right now. That's an example of it. But President Trump's point of view was Iran is evil. We can't talk to them. So now they're evil with nuclear weapons. Probably. We don't know because they're police state. No. And then that means they're more internationalists. Now put a question mark there. Not always. Internationalism point of view could be we want peace and diplomacy, trade agreements, negotiate agreements. Internationalists could also mean sending troops. And then conservative, much more isolations. So avoid the foreign entanglements, but also more conservative means unilateral, which could mean sending troops. So it's a little more complex than that, but those are the two different points of view. So Wilson was clearly more liberal in this context. He was conservative in other ways, liberal in other ways. I guess it's all of us in here. Lodge was fairly liberal, but he wanted reservations, so he's more conservative. Irreconcilables, fully conservative. And it goes like this. The more you want a League of Nations, the more liberal you are. Does that make sense? The more fearful, the more conservative. The two were no way. Or we want, control. So let's get to this then. Look, what about the League of Nations? Article 10. On the documents, they put 10, so you're not confused by the wrong names. That's that collective security we talked about. I'll let you jot it down, but let's make sure we get it for certain. Members are united to stop aggressive war. And that whole goal is to deter aggression. Deter aggression. Nobody would ever attack another member nation because all the other members would join in. And so this is the liberal point of view. This is a liberal idea. The conservatives are fearful of this. The more conservative you are, and these are the reservations here. They wanted reservations in Article 10, also 11, but everybody focused on 10. Big. So they brought up the Constitution. The Constitution says Congress will declare war. And so they said, we're not going to be forced into a war. And the treaty implies the United States will be forced into a war. The treaty doesn't actually say that, but it's implied. And don't forget, the League of Nations was part of the Treaty of Versailles. But if it passes the Senate, a treaty becomes U.S. law. And Wilson tried to say, no, we still have to declare war, but they said, we don't believe you. I should add the conservatives do have a point there, looking on the road. When's the last time the United States has declared war? 1942. That was a civil war that we got involved in. The United States has not declared war since 1942. Yes. It's a war, and we're at war places right now. The Congress just didn't declare war. That's a legal international measure. Congress didn't do it. We just did it. The president is in charge, and Congress kept appropriating money. That's what happened. So here's Wilson, and this is a very kind of reservationist idea. Everlasting peace and all the world's agreeing with Wilson. Look at the gun. They're like, yeah, but we're not going to give these up. So when it got to the Senate, 2/3 of the Senate had to ratify. Let's get the three groups so we got them one more time. I want to loyal Democrats, or whatever you want to call it. These are people that are committed to Wilson. Some are liberal, some are just, for whatever reason, they're going to vote with Wilson, of a loyalty to Wilson. They owe Wilson. So much of politics and voting and for laws, they're favors. Deals have been made. You owe me. I supported you, you support me. And a lot of these loyal Democrats despise Henry Cabot Lodge. And so they would rather go to war than vote for anything with Henry Cabot Lodge. You'd be shocked how many laws are voted for or against based upon personal animosity. We'd all like to think they're noble and only care about the country. No, they're humans and irrational, like those people out here, not in here, but out there. Reservationists, they're mostly Republicans, and that's why Du Bois said the Republicans. Because Republicans are in opposition, but there's a lot of irreconcilable Republicans too. And their big issue, change Article 10. So they're fairly, they'll agree to a league, they just need Article 10. So you can argue either they're fairly liberal or fairly conservative. Henry Cabot Lodge, their leader. Oh, so here's a reservationist cartoon. Here's Lodge leading in a treaty, like the treaty just got surgery and repaired, that's the reservations. And he's saying, okay, here's the treaty. It's still, healing, but we can pass it. So that's a pro-reservationist treaty. And then we get, of course, the irreconcilable. These are almost completely conservative. These are mostly, actually, Democrats, a bunch of populist Democrats. See if. So Wilson went around and he campaigned in reservationist states. He went to states where there are reservations. So Wilson, who actually struggled, like in sit-down conversations, or he really struggled with that. He struggled talking to people. And so he instead thought he could go to the states where there are prominent reservations, including Montana, and give a speech, try to rally the people of Montana or other states to push irreconcilables or reservationists to vote for it. And we went on these speeches or went on this tour and showed the problem that our president has with influencing. It totally backfired. So when Wilson went there, a lot of people took the speeches not as Wilson is trying to rally the country together, all of us together for the treaty. A lot of people in various states took it as Wilson's criticizing our Senate. Wilson's telling us what to do. Oh, sure. Well, let's go back in Washington, but he's coming here and telling us we're wrong. And they didn't like that. The president has that problem. They can go to places and sometimes that might encourage people, but also that might get the opposite reaction. And then in Denver, he had a major stroke. It might have been 3 strokes. And here's the mystery then. For the next 9 months, no one's going to see him. He's going to be completely incapacitated. Now, though, they're going to come out. His new wife, he got married again. His first wife died. She came out and said he can talk, but he can't. It takes him a while. He had a major stroke, and strokes can be horrific, and they really didn't know how to treat one at all back then, except for rest. So I'll talk to him, but he's still present. As it turned out, he couldn't talk or communicate for months. And this was kept secret from the American public. Kept totally secret. And that's part of the reason why after the Kennedy assassination, why the 26th Amendment would be made. You actually would say if the president is incapacitated for any time, the vice president must get power. Like if the president has to get surgery, let's say, by the time that the president is out, the vice president must take power. Instead of a procedure to find out if the president is incapacitated or unfit. So here's the problem with that. Wilson was saying there could be no changes. Any changes will make the League of Nations too weak. No changes, no changes, no changes, stroke. See the problem? And then his wife is the only one communicating with him, whatever the communication was, she kept that same mind and nobody had a stroke. So there's no got that situation, no compromise. It's one of those great what ifs. Would he have changed? I'm guessing not. He was too much of an ideologue. So when the vote came, the first vote had reservations. So it limited Article 10. irreconcilables and loyal Democrats voted against them, no reservations. So Wilson did not release those voters. The next one. And I put that cartoon up again. No change. So no change to the treaty. The treaty Wilson won, but reservationists and irreconcilables voted against it. Didn't pass. Didn't even get 50% of the vote. Lodge and other reservationists like Hoover begged Democrats to join in. But Wilson never fully released it. A few loyal Democrats voted. In fact, it got the majority, but not 2/3. Because every irreconcilable and most of the loyal Democrats still voted against it. It had the majority of the Senate, but not 2/3. And that's one of the great what ifs. What if Wilson would have released it? Would it have passed with reservations? The United States would have entered the league, and who knows how things would have been different. Or if the reservationists would have accepted this idea that we still had to declare war and allow it to pass. It seems like a really big, yeah.
What do you mean when you say like?
So what happened is, for whatever reason, all these loyal Democrats have pledged to President Wilson they would vote against it. And so Wilson would have had to say, it's called released in the legislature. It would have been saying, you can vote in the country. So you're no longer bound to your original promise, even though technically what makes you bound to it, whatever. Because some did vote for the reservation. So the United States never passed it. It was never ratified. The United States would remain isolationist, so the United States became an isolationist country. They dominated. No, the U.S. was still involved in trade, foreign affairs. The U.S. would sign, like, for example, 3 naval treaties, other treaties, but they were never part of the League of Nations. And I love this League of Nations bridge. Here are the key allies of the war, but the keystone isn't here. Now, the U.S. got rid of, basically demobilized the whole army to nothing overnight again. It's still the most powerful economy in the world. And almost all the gold in the world ended up in the United States. Britain had the largest gold reserves in the world when the war began, but they had to use it all. Here is a pro isolationist cartoon saying we're going to avoid the icebergs of foreign treaties and League of Nations. And yes, 8 years earlier, or 7 years earlier, the Titanic had been sunk. It's referring to the Titanic. And so, I can do with this. I changed my mind. Let's get to this. The 20s. A little bit. We're not going to talk about much. Quite a special topic right after spring break. We're doing organized crime. Let's see. And a dress up there. Yeah, got the dress up.
Can we dress up anyway?
You can dress up any way you want.
But like, can we get extra credit?
No, it's always got to be for something. Well, like I said, talk to your math teacher. Talk to your math teacher. That's a cool picture of New York City. You got to admit. They had color photography then. It was just so expensive. And so, right after the war, like every war, there's going to be a post-war recession. So all of a sudden, the war is going on, and they go from full mobilization to we're not making stuff in the military at all. Overnight. But also, you have all these veterans. 3.5 million veterans are immediately released. They got $100 in a suit. That's literally what they got when they left. The idea was they could go apply for a job. The problem is there's no jobs. The factories are shutting down. But there's also massive inflation. Think about what's happened. Factories took over a year to go from consumer goods to military, and now it's going to take a year it's called retooling, to have the factory go back to consumer goods. So the consumer goods are out there, the prices are going up. And at the same time, the Spanish flu is still going on. So that's causing higher prices. So this is the size of the economy and this big drop in the economy. Farm prices were the highest they had ever been in American history in 1919. They have never reached that height again, not even close to the sun. If you take inflation into account, not even close. And so, if prices are going to double in 1919. That's going to lead to a whole series of strikes. Wages never kept up. Wages were still stuck in 1917, 1918 levels. Now, there were very few strikes during the war, but after the war, workers had had enough. They couldn't afford the most basic necessities of food and shelter. The first big strikes are going to happen in a strike of police officers in Boston, which actually the governor of Massachusetts, a guy named Calvin Coolidge, is going to totally attack the police officers, force them to go back to work, and be kind of a hero for the anti-union right wing. He will become president. And in Seattle, longshoremen, those who unload ships. It started out there, and soon a nationwide series of strikes, the most violent and horrible strikes, brutally put down by the state government, would be in West Virginia. They call them the Coalfield Wars. And this is what workers were massacred in a place called Matewan. I want to watch a fantastic movie, Matewan. 89 or 91, I can't remember the exact date. Good movie. Over 200 strikers or 200 union members, miners were dying every week. That's how dangerous the mines were. Combined with low pay, company towns, company strip, the unions were destroyed. But before we get to that, and wages be stagnant the entire decade. You have this wave of strikes, a post-war depression. And we get this prices going up, depression. And don't forget, you have the Spanish flu. People go nuts in pandemics. They're gonna lose their mind. I don't know if you know that. Also, one thing that really surprised me is what's kind of happening now is that after the Spanish flu, the horrors of that, everyone tried to forget it. And no one talked about it. And it's amazing how like everyone just forgot about COVID. I had somebody tell me, God, COVID didn't really do that much. Just not a million people. I remember when we were called out, those heady days, those wondrous days when all of a sudden we're not in school anymore. I think I was the only teacher who told their classes, next week we might not be here. No one says that. But in New York, 2,000 people were dying every day. We remember when they had to get refrigerated cars for all the bodies. It's like everyone it's like it didn't happen. Same thing happened here. It's like we don't want to remember. We just don't want to remember. For which I don't believe. It's awful. I still have bad dreams about those days trying to teach. You guys in 8th grade? 7th, I know you're a punk, but how many did classes get started for you right away, or was it a lot of just kind of?
I don't even think you. I didn't class.
I did class. I did it, but it was so hard. I think your sister. We're doing it at home. Yeah. I'm filming from home. God. Yeah, I'm really glad I could recall those days. See, so I understand why people wanted to forget. But then something else big would happen. There's anarchists. Remember anarchists? Right after the war, partially encouraged by the Bolshevik Revolution, even though Bolsheviks were enemies of the anarchists. They all kind of said they wanted socialism, but everyone had a different point of view. There were over 50 attacks from 1919 to 1920. Almost all bombing, including the home of the Attorney General of the United States, Palmer. One of the biggest anarchist attacks, the biggest anarchist attack in American history would be right outside of Wall Street in 1920. 38 people would be killed. They had a cart pull up like it was selling food, but had a bomb attached. And this you combine all these, now we have strikes, bad economy, price going up, anarchist attacks. I should add, this was the last major anarchist attack in the United States until the late 1960s. The 1970s had the most terrorist attacks in America. By far. By far. Yes. We're not there yet. So with that, remember total war though. All that thinking about total war. You're at war. To unify together to fight off the enemy. And who are one of the big enemies? Those anti-war socialists, unions like the IWW. And that you can't just shut that off, especially after the Attorney General's home was blown up. He was mad. And that's going to trick. And so the feeling was, are these strikes and bombings? Is that not workers demanding rights? Or is that the beginning of the revolution? And total war, and everyone all geared up to look for the enemy. Is it a revolution? Is it the Bolsheviks? And here's an anti-Bolshevik cartoon turning back liberty and progress, turning back the clock. And a lot of people say, we got to get those workers back to work. We need our coal. Here's Uncle Sam beating the labor unions for coal. Saying, yeah, go in there and die 200 a week. We need our coal. Quit whining. Is it the revolution? And that's going to trigger the Red Scare. An anti-communist, anti-Bolshevik fear. Attorney General Palmer would use the Department of Justice, which had grown bigger because of the Espionage Act. And using the Espionage Act, went after suspected communists. There really weren't very many communists. There weren't very many socialists. Who did they go after? It was anti-labor, especially the IWW. Remember I mentioned them before in Franklin and Butte? And so here's like, do you know about the IWW? Informing the police. Here are radicals being kicked out of town. Here, American institutions crushing Bolshevism, the IWW. This was actually done by a cartoon made by Ford, shown to their workers so they wouldn't join a union. And it devastates labor unions. The Red Scare. So remember bomb throwing anarchists? It rotated or switched to Reds, Bolsheviks, communists. At the same time, during the war was a phenomenon called the Great Migration. Beginning before World War I, but during it, a significant number of African Americans fled the restrictions of the Jim Crow sharecropper South, and they went north. Jobs. The problem is, remember sundown towns? Those sundown towns were almost all the medium to small towns across the north, across the plains, much of the east, all over, including Montana. If they can't go to sundown towns, where did they go? That's the only place they could go. But that's also what the jobs were. A significant number. People went to Chicago, Detroit, and New York City, but also Newark, Philadelphia. A big wave of migrants from the United States moving in for better jobs. Now, there wasn't Jim Crow laws, but they had basically segregated neighborhoods. And this radical change in cities, combined with the Red Scare and everything else, is going to lead to, we're jumping right to here, Red Summer. It's going to be called race riots, but in reality, it was white vigilante groups attacking these migrants who moved into their town, living there, working in factories, working for the war, or veterans coming back. Washington, D.C. had some of the worst, but they were in 60 cities. Big one in Chicago. I mentioned Omaha because my grandma and grandpa, in fact, right before they got married, on my mom's side, my mom's parents, they were living in Omaha, remember that. And I know once again I'm bragging about that. I've been told. I know. I can't help. But it was called Red Summer. And you might see this said, understand why they say Red Summer, Red Scare must be anti-communist. No, it was called Red Summer by African Americans by the amount of blood they spilled. Anywhere from 500 to 1,000 African Americans were killed or lynched. Most of the attacks were during the 19, but the most famous would actually be a year and a half after Red Summer, and it would be in Tulsa, 1940. And this would be like the culmination where African Americans would be very clear, we better do exactly what we're told. Stick to your neighborhoods. There was a veteran of the US Army was accused of rape. He essentially dated a white woman. He would be lynched, and vigilante groups of whites attacked the black section of Tulsa. I know the bell rang. I'll finish it. Finish it when we finish it. We have a DBQ tomorrow, right? And about planets, we're gonna watch that great video on the 20s. I thought that'd be a good way post DBQ to spend Friday. Sound good? I watched that whole thing, could do nothing. Goodbye, everybody. If you have any questions, I will check Teams tonight, 8:30, somewhere right before there. We'll see you. Bye, man. See ya, goodbye. See ya, goodbye. Thanks for cleaning it up.
Yeah.
At least not like this.
See ya, bye. And this will work? Give them a video. Give them a video.
Okay.
Peter, let me ask. So you wanna?
Because I think it's like one block, it's like, you're gonna really see.
With B. Everybody else is free. Those are one of these. Only about his treaty, no change. Got it all? No.
Yeah, I don't.
He wants no changes.
Okay. And then the base was like, yeah, but we need to. And then there's like. Oh, that's max. You think you did. I say you walk over and I'm like, no, you're like, absolutely not. This is oh, awesome. You got broken. That looked good. I've given up. She did pretty yesterday. No, it's sugar. And it's a stupid sugar. It's not the last. So listen. That's a fact. And it just says, I can chocolate. Chocolate sweet. So we're talking. Chocolate, you have to be there. No, it's okay. It's now. Oh, it's a nice sugar. It's sugar. It's so bad. Oh, actually, they would say, like, so how do you know? Or, nice granola. No.
Where you going again?
Next course.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well,
Anything is really positive. After, before it's.
you didn't tell me.
Originated.
Yeah, I think you probably do really well on it, but I think you feel a lot better. I definitely feel better. Who would like, check out the documents. I'll answer any questions off the DBQ office. I'll help you any way I can. Some of my answers might even be relatively correct.
Oh.
Oh, I'm recording.
Oh.